Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello. Welcome everyone to this conversation. This one is a gem. So if you are someone who identifies as a creative, or if you would like to bring more creativity into your life, this is not a conversation to miss. It's super fun. It's very alive. It is with Jamie Ridler, who is a creative coach and luminary. And we discussed Jamie's experience in traversing her multifaceted artistic journey. Jamie has been a theater performer, a dancer, a creative coach, a DJ, an entrepreneur, and a visual artist. And we also talked about what it means to cultivate a steady practice that encourages rather than inhibits or limits our unique energetic expressions. Whenever the word practice comes up, I can already see a bunch of my clients and students kind of shriveling up and contracting for good reasons, because usually when we talk about practice or when we talk about consistency, it just zaps all of the energy out of the room. Right? We want to be creative, we want to be free. And in this conversation, Jamie and I spoke about how at the core of her method and the core of her work, practice is really at the foundation of it, because practice helps us build momentum. Practice helps us find what it is that we are here to do through the act of doing it. We also talked about how finding the right teachers can help unlock this deeper permission that we need in order to authentically express ourselves. This is something that I also see a lot of creatives, myself included over the years, struggling with, because we sometimes have a concept or an idea of what the right teacher looks like. And usually we focus on one aspect. We focus on needing to find a teacher who's really skilled or who's really respected in their field. Or we swing the other direction and we hope to find teachers who are really compassionate and really, giving us a lot of permission to express however we want to express. When in reality, often the right teacher is really someone who walks this delicate balance, right? Of being able to provide structure and being able to tell us when maybe there are certain corrections that we need to hear in order to kind of snap back into alignment, while at the same time also knows how to help us access that heart, right? That creative heart that really is the primary reason why we're attracted to exploring art making in the first place. And finally, we talked about how to balance our desires for control and freedom. And again, I know this is something that a lot of creative people really have to contend with, because control is just part of it's part of our DNA as a creative person, right? That creativity really happens within boundaries. Without the 3-minute song structure or without the canvas, the creative expression doesn't really shine through, right? And at the same time, when we get too rigid, when we get too controlling of our expressions, that can also take away some of the fun and some of the profound expressions that we are really seeking when we come into this path. Okay, so before we get into this conversation, I want to read you Jamie's bio. For over 20 years, Jamie Ridler has helped thousands of emerging, aspiring, and established creatives answer the artistic call with a confident and courageous yes. Jamie's unique approach, called the Studio Way, is rooted in a lifetime as an artist, performer, and highly sensitive person. Her mission is to unlock the creative magic lying dormant in the hearts of underexpressed artists everywhere, including yours. All right, here's my conversation with Jamie Ridler. Enjoy. Well, welcome, Jamie. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to talk to you. I've been immersing myself in your world. You and I feel like have been somewhat connected over the years. Like we've been in some of the same spaces,
Yes.
and I've kind of had your work in the back of my mind, and then you reached out and you so gracefully invited me into the symposium that you're doing. I then went to your website and I started reading about your work and immersing myself, listening to you. And I have to say, I just really, really love your work. So thank you for existing. Thank you for having done this work for a long time, it seems like. You've been at it for some time. And so yeah, I want to give credit where it's due and um, just really expressing to you how much I admire and appreciate your work. So thank you for being here.
Oh, Jonathan, I am so moved before. I mean, I was moved and excited before I walked in the door, and now my heart is so touched. And I feel the same way, when we got here, I was like, I feel like I know you, like, because I feel like there's been this intersection, this sort of like we're in the same constellations,
Hmm.
maybe.
Yeah.
And I, of course, have been listening to this podcast for years. Like, I went back to look to see how long you've been doing this, which is 3 years, right? Is that
Yeah.
about right? Three
Hmm.
years.
Yeah.
And I have spent so much time with you and and really talking back to you, like not talking back to you, but like responding to you and saying,
Yeah.
yeah, oh, that's so interesting. Or I'm
Mm.
thinking about that differently now. And one of the places I'm really excited to talk to you about is that you and I have a kind of intersection of magical, mystical stuff and arts, creative stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a very special place for me. And that's what our symposium is about, Magic in the Making, which will
Hmm.
start on October 6th. I'm so excited to record my interview with you.
Me too.
And we'll be talking about the transformational power of art and magic and that intersection. So I'm
Mm.
excited about that. And I
Yeah.
must say, yes, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been a creative coach for 20 years, which still
Wow.
surprises me. And a lot of that time, my work has been online. I've had a
Mm.
podcast, I've had a very active YouTube channel. I've really loved connecting with people through sharing in that way.
Yeah.
Like I know we're in a time when we're very discouraged about the internet and social
Mm.
media but I've been around long enough that I remember the ground we built on, do you know? And I
Yeah.
remember building community and
Mm.
meeting beautiful people. And look, hey, we're still connected through that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's still possible to hear music through the noise. And I think that's important for us to remember.
Yeah. Yeah. I got chills hearing you
Mm.
say, hearing music through the noise. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's still happening. Like, look at us,
Look at us.
look at this conversation. Um, I wasn't gonna start here, Jamie, but I think this is actually a really incredible place to start, which is, would you speak more about where is that intersection of art making and magic for you?
Yeah, it is such a beautiful question. And I'll tell you, even I run, like my business is called the School of Creative Magic.
Hmm.
And when I named it that, which was just a couple of years ago, I rebranded as the School of Creative Magic. Felt like, oh, now I have to describe what creative magic is. Like I need to know how to articulate that. But the truth is, every time I talk to somebody, there's an immediate resonance.
Mm,
It's like creativity and magic are the same.
mm,
They just,
mm.
my favorite and simplest example is where there was nothing, now there is something,
Yeah.
and that's magic. And also for me, the whole reason I got into the field of creative coaching was because I knew that if we could experience our agency in our creativity, then we could start to believe in our agency in
Mm.
life.
Yeah.
And so that for me is everything. And we don't even realize as we're drawing or painting or dancing or singing or writing poetry that what we're doing also is preparing to bring that essence of ourselves, to bring change, to bring transformation, to bring
Mm.
contribution to life and to this world.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is why I feel such resonance with your work because when you said that, it reminded me of, I think this is maybe episode, oh gosh, like 3 on the podcast where I talk about how to me, what matters when it comes to mystical practices, modalities is to remember our creative agency.
Yes.
Because so often, we do live in a world that is built upon or kind of a system that's built upon us forgetting that, and it's always so wild when you're on the other side of that, when you finally remember your creative agency, you're like, why didn't I think of that? It's like, duh, right? But it is really kind of this very existential human drama and struggle that I think we go
Yes.
through and believing in our own powerlessness. And, as I was reading about your story and your journey on your website, Jamie, I also felt a lot of resonance. First of all, the fact that you are a multi-expression, multi-modality
Yeah.
person. There's so many different
Mhm.
creative outlets that you have relationships with and that you
Yes.
really have connected and reconnected and maybe disconnected from over the years. And when I read what you wrote about your relationship with visual art, that really moved me
Mm.
because I felt very similarly to you. Like I remember being, I don't know, 4 years old, and taking out my coloring pencils and starting to draw all over my dad's new car, which was not appreciated. It was not appreciated. Um, would you say more about that? Would you say more about your relationship with art making as a child?
Oh, I love that question. Visual art making is such a tender place for me.
Hmm.
When I was a little girl, I was very lucky. I had a very artistic mom, and
Mm.
she loved just giving me something to do and letting me go. I realize now it's probably because I was a pretty active kid, and she was like, "Here, do this, here, do that." But we had around, I'm so blessed. We had maracas and paints and every kind of tool you could imagine was available to me, and I was able to use it. I was free. But then when you reach that stage, and many people listening will have gone through this in whatever art form, it could be dance, could be music, you reach this point where all of a sudden people really care. Are you good at this though?
Mm.
And you start being assessed and you start second guessing. And visual arts was just like, I just dropped it. Like it was not a part of my life at all. And much later, years and years later, I came back to it. And Jonathan, I'll tell you, I took a class. My sister is an artist too. She
Mm.
went to art school. She's very good at this stuff. And we would go together to a beginner art class. And I was so keen and it was so hard. I left that class crying
Mm.
every single time.
Mm.
And my sister finally said to me, Jamie, I don't think we should go. Like this is so painful. Like you're
Mm.
sad every time we leave. And I said,
Yeah.
this is why I need to go.
Mm.
Because there's
Mhm.
something in my heart that's aching for this. And I'm not getting what I need.
Mm.
And so I tried to finally, I got some teachers that were the right teachers for me,
Mm.
and then this huge release in my body, also acceptance of my own style, my own preferences, my own, all of that was deeply healing. And now it's a part of my life. Like I have my own artwork on my walls, in my dining room. Even my husband's like, let's put these up. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
This is so healing for me. This is amazing
Mm,
to me.
mm,
So it's, I guess one of the things I want people to hear about that is it's possible,
yeah.
and if it calls to you, it belongs to you, and
Mm,
nobody can tell you it doesn't. We're
yeah.
really used to that world of directors choosing whether you get a part or someone assessing whether you can get into the school or whatever it is. But baseline spiritual practice, deep, intimate connection with the art, that's yours
Yeah.
forever,
Yeah.
no question.
Yeah. Wow. What was the difference between the teachers that made you feel embraced versus the teachers that did not?
Oh, that's a potent question. And I notice I'm a very positive person, but I notice it takes me to quite a critical place
Mm,
where I feel in a lot of the art classes that I took, there wasn't really instruction. Like there
mm,
was a sort of an assumption of what you would know how to do. And
mm.
I have enough agency to ask questions,
Yeah.
and I felt like I couldn't, it was like learning a new language and I just
Mm,
wasn't getting the grammar. And literally in one class, someone just spent maybe 10 minutes teaching shading. And
mm.
suddenly I was like, look what I can do. I just
Wow.
didn't have that skill before.
Yeah.
So, and this is something people really don't talk about in the arts. And Jonathan, I have a feeling this is something you have something to say about,
A
which is
lot.
we often sort of stay away from the skill piece
Yeah.
because we want it to be accessible to everybody. And
Hmm.
so we kind of like as if it's a choice between one or the other. You either have skill or you have joy.
Yeah.
And it's like actually everybody can learn skills, and even people who are deeply professional and skilled and disciplined should have joy.
Yes.
All of that's available to all of us creatives, whatever path we take.
I cannot agree more with you. I feel like in a lot of I recently went back to practicing the piano and I realized there were things that my piano professor had always told me over the 6 years that we were together very intensively. Like I would have lessons with him every single week that I now know how to practice, but it took me a very long time, Jamie, to actually know how to do it because he never showed me.
Right.
And it's not, I'm not criticizing necessarily, but I'm just wondering like why it was clear that on some level I was struggling, and maybe there was something about, not wanting the coach or the teacher not wanting to seem too basic, not wanting
Right.
to crush the ego of the students. But I feel, and this is something I've noticed in my, coaching and mentoring practice too, with people who come to me and want to work with me, where actually I do people such a disservice if I don't break down exactly what they're saying. Like when someone's saying, "Hey, I'm really struggling," and then they start going on this huge description about this internal existential drama that they had with their mother. When I started asking them, like, can you talk about specifics? Can we really get into the nitty-gritty there?
Mm,
Something transformed, Jamie. And I think what you're speaking to, so I know I'm kind of making a very loose connection between, the art making, the maybe more traditional art making practices that we have and the spiritual practices that we engage in. But I was really struck by this particular passage that I read in your website. Can I read it back to you?
oh, I'd be delighted.
Great. So you wrote, whether you are an awakening, emerging, or established creative, practice is the alpha and the omega.
Mm,
Practice is the renewing well you turn to again and again, the powerful root that both grounds you and supports you in reaching new heights. It is how you invite inspiration and assure the muse that you are ready for her arrival. It is the earth beneath your feet as you dance your way through wild creative adventures.
Mm,
Practice is your path to self-knowledge, inspiration, discovery, mastery, resilience, and so much more. Practice brings you home to yourself whenever you have lost your way, which I
mm.
just thought, whoa. Whoa. Can you speak more about that?
Thank you, Jonathan. It's
Mhm.
wild to hear your words reflected back to you. And as you're reading, I'm like, yes, I believe that. Yes, I believe that. Yes, I believe that. And I guess there's some things about practice that are so important.
Mm,
One is I think there's a way it tunes us into rhythm.
mm,
And rhythm as a creative is incredibly important. And as a person, as a spiritual person, it's incredibly important to build for ourselves sort of a heartbeat to our own work. It's a way of expressing who we are and asserting that too. I am a person who, I am a person who shows up. I am a person who creates. I mean, that I always think about that fantastic Van Gogh quote of, if you don't believe yourself to be a painter, then by all means paint, and
mm,
then you'll know it is so.
mm,
That's my retelling of that quote. Um, and I guess one of the things I want to say, especially for people who listen to that and think, oh, I want that. I want all of those things, resilience and mastery and practice feels so hard. Like, how do I show up? Are you talking every day? That kind of
yeah,
question. One of the things
yeah.
I really want to say is practice doesn't have to look like the same thing every day or the same thing at 10 a.m. every morning. It can. And
Mm,
there are people for whom that is amazing. 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm up, and 7 o'clock, I'm sitting writing, and I do that every day. And that supports them and that nourishes them. And then there's other people that'll be like, as long as I have 15 minutes of creative time at some point during the day. And it might be drawing, or it might be dancing, or it might be being out in my garden, or it might be reading.
mm,
That counts too,
yeah.
you know? And so there's a way that it's rhythm and it's support and it's unique to you. And you really need to design it in a way that nourishes, not tightens you up or locks you up.
Mm. That is such an important point, Jamie. I notice for myself, I am the kind of person who gets rigid very easily.
Hmm.
Um, it's both on a physical level, on a spiritual level, all the levels. It's really easy for me to just kind of clamp up and then hold on to something. And it's been interesting uh, renegotiating my relationship with practice over the years because I used to, when I was back in music school, I used to think that the only way to practice was to kind of tighten up, to like
Yes.
get more discipline, to get clearer. Earlier, you even mentioned, when you founded the studio, you felt like you had to describe very succinctly what creative
Yes.
magic means.
Yes.
That's I feel like 90% of the time when I'm in my creative journey, that's the kind of struggle that I go through. I feel like I have to get narrow, I have to get clear, I have to be really succinct, I have to be really defined. And actually, surprisingly, in the past couple of years, what I found is what I really needed was to kind of confuse myself out of the rigidity.
Mm.
And that is my creative practice. Like I'm always, even when it comes to recording interviews like this, I try not to get stuck into a mode
Right.
because my brain has this really funny way of like telling me like, Jonathan, today you gotta be like this, you know?
Yes.
And it's so I think that it's really insidious for a lot of us. Like a lot of us really get into that space of thinking, if I want to be a good artist, if I want to be a good musician, if I want to be a good creative, I have to do it a specific way. And
Yes.
something I was really feeling into when you were speaking, Jamie, was even just the name of the symposium, Magic in the Making, seems to me. and I'm curious to hear about your intention with this to invite us into really appreciating the process.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I never want us to miss that.
Mm,
It's an We are in the transformation while we are creating. Like that's
mm,
where we are being created, is
mm,
while we are creating. And
mm.
so many of us creatives know too. It's like once we're done, we're like, oh, we're done. Okay. Like the energy has been transferred into the thing and it's complete and now we're off to the next thing.
Yeah.
So imagine if that's true, if we never enjoy that process and we also never take time to celebrate our achievement, we're in a pretty destructive cycle.
Mm,
And I want to just go
mhm.
back and say this idea of confusion as a superpower or like as a spell you can cast to create more aliveness is so exciting to me, Jonathan. Thank you for sharing that. And I really want to acknowledge too, because I'm pretty sure we're both Virgo rising, right?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
So there's also a way that structure is our superpower.
Yeah.
And so this is where it becomes really fine distinctions of
Mm,
energy mastery
hmm.
because we can go in a certain direction of structure and support, and it's excellent for us. We don't
Yeah.
even notice it. It's
Mm,
just what we do.
yeah.
People around us are like, of course you're organized. Of course you've got it together. And then we just hit that edge where it starts to turn in on us,
Mm,
and it starts to become too tight and
mm,
too demanding. And all of us have this with whatever your skills could be in the opposite. I'm really loose. I'm really free. People admire that about me. And then
yeah.
I reach a point where I become chaotic. And I
Hmm.
reach a point where people can't rely on me and I can't rely on myself. And so it's really a dance of a lifetime to
Mm,
try to find that sweet spot where you're making use of your gifts but not letting them cross over into that edgy place where they're hurting you instead of helping you.
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Ooh, that's so powerful. Um, I want to kind of gently pivot us into talking about performance, Jamie, because
Yes, okay.
you brought this up in our email exchange, and um, I was also listening to a video where you talked about, I think, going into audition during, was it college years? Going into audition for theater. And this experience of following your gut and then
Oh,
getting into. Mhm. Do you
yes, I
know
know which
what I'm
story you
talking
mean. I've
about?
been to a few auditions, so I was just trying to
Yeah.
place for me, but this changed my life.
Mhm.
This moment of I was in undergrad, I was going to university and I was studying like many creative girls do. I was studying English.
Mm.
And I was walking through the courtyard of the University of Toronto, and my boyfriend at the time saw a sign and it said, auditions here. He said, I think you might like that. I walked over without even thinking, signed my name on the audition sheet. The next day, auditioned for the theater program. I was one of, I think, 30 people out of hundreds that made it in and changed my major. And then, boom, my life went down this theater path.
Wow.
And it was just everything physically, my body just moved and signed my name. And I didn't prepare a monologue. I just went. I just
Wow.
showed up. And it literally changed the direction of my life.
Did you have a relationship with theater prior to that?
Tiny. Like I had a strong relationship with dance my entire life.
Hmm.
And I'd always taken, I guess I did take theater in like junior high,
Mm.
but I remember early days when I was a kid, I was in a theater class. But when the movement teacher came in, I was like, this is for me. Like the dance stuff, that's for me. Um, but so it was a surprise.
Mm.
My undergrad was hard, but I then went on to do my master's and I did all but my dissertation for my doctorate in theater. And in grad school, I really found myself.
Mm.
I put on shows. I started a theater company. I did movement choreography for tons of different productions. And I felt like myself and I felt at home. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful time of my life. I ended up leaving my doctorate because the truth was I spent way more time in the theater than I ever did in the library. And I just, before, when tuition came up one more time, I thought, no, I think I have to admit the truth here.
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah. I feel like that isn't that such a reckoning to like realize that, oh yeah, what I
Yes,
really want is to do the thing rather than maybe get, these titles or these few letters
yes.
behind my name.
And it's
Hmm.
so easy to feel like you keep want to move forward,
Yeah.
but and do better and do better. Like if you're an achiever, which I am, it's like you want
Hmm.
to do the next thing and the next. And I thought, do I really want to be a professor?
Mm.
And the answer was no. And the funny thing is, Jonathan, this was ended up being such a leap of faith because I had no idea what I was going to do. And the truth is, the work I do now did not exist then. I could not have visioned myself into the life I have now
Yeah.
because it was coaching. When I started coaching, if you said you were a coach, people still said baseball coach like that. Like, so all of these, then blogging developed, then social media developed, then YouTube developed, all of these
Mm.
things, Zoom developed, like all of these things were not available when
Right.
I started.
Right.
So there was a bit of a void period. But I think even now, I'll say, just to come back to this performance piece, I often say everything I ever needed to know about life I learned in theater,
Mm.
and that's the truth. How to make magic out of like a red bucket and a pair of shoes, because theater has no budget. Right? So it's like, so what's your imagination going to do with this? Or
Uh-huh.
deeply connecting with people. And
Mm.
this is where one of the things I wrote to you about was we really have this stereotype about performers
Hmm.
as self-indulgent, as egotistic. And my experience has been, I mean, there'll always be people like that in every field. And that tends to be people who want to be stars as opposed to people who are pursuing the art. It's not the
Mm.
same thing. It's like influencers versus community builders. It's the
Yeah.
same,
Yeah.
you know? But really, what we do as performers is become like a conduit for magic. We're taking something extraordinary, ineffable, ephemeral, and transmitting it through ourselves as a channel
Mm.
to really connect to people. Like, I always think it's so funny. We're so hard on performers, and yet we love them so deeply. We've all been
Mm.
to a concert where we're in tears and a song is like changing us in some fundamental way, or
Yeah.
recognizing who we are, or stories that we carry with us, or poems we've memorized so we can recite them to ourselves. And yet we're so critical
Mm.
of the people who are doing it. I find
Mm.
this a really odd disconnect.
Yeah. What do you think lies at the heart of that disconnect?
I do think that it is a part of an artist's job to take care of themselves as like I always quote Shakespeare here, we are such stuff as dreams are made on, right? Like
Mm.
we are the material.
Hmm.
And so when we have really strong boundaries, when we insist on a high level of self-care, that's a very antithetical to what we're taught is okay as people in this world,
Right.
particularly too as people socialize as women.
Yeah.
So if you're like, so those are the jokes, right? Oh, you need that kind of tea, a certain organic honey for your voice. And yet I want to hear you sing with that sweet, sweet voice I love. It's like, well, then
Mm.
you have to trust me to care for my instrument,
Right.
and honor that, taking us back to practice too, that this is what I do in order to achieve that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this kind of takes me back to our conversation about process, actually, Jamie.
Mm,
So interesting how this seems to be, coming back together. Something I realized in myself, which I feel like I've had suspicion about this before, but only recently has it become really clear and blatant to me, which is how much I have been taught to be ashamed of my own process. And
Mm,
earlier you also
yes.
mentioned being a woman and all the conditioning and socialization around that. And I think part of that too is thinking about the lunar cycle as a metaphor for the process, or
Mm,
even like pregnancy, right? Like the
right.
ability to give birth and the process of kind of growing another human being or growing an artistic work inside of you as I don't know, somehow there's something that we ostracize there. There's something that we project onto there that
Yes.
feels, I don't know, it feels really unfair, but it's kind of embedded in a lot of our psyche. And maybe it's very antithetical to like the systems, the patriarchy, the capitalism, all
Yes.
that, right? Colonialism. Um, yeah, but I just want to reflect to you. I don't know if there's a question here, but I want to reflect to you what I'm hearing is that performance isn't really a finished product. It's actually part of the process, right? But we don't always see it as that. And so there's this disconnect between
Yes.
the consumer and the creative. Hmm.
Yes. I think this sort of ephemeral nature of it too makes it challenging for people. Like when you are a visual artist or you're a writer, you finish with
Mm.
a something.
Yeah.
And instead, as a performer, you have this moment. And there's no way, even if you film it or there's something in that moment and there's something in the exchange. A part of what I'm hearing and what you're saying is I'm really thinking about the power of it
Mm.
and that being a reason why it's a bit shunned or contained because
Mm.
you can activate people. You
Mhm.
can motivate people. You can connect with people and make them realize they're not alone.
Yeah.
That all of us here in these thousands of people who are here, we're having the same feeling and we can do something about it. That is magnificent power and
Mm.
scary, you
Hmm.
know, to people too. And I'm just thinking about the shunning and the shaming too, because boy, all of us have probably got the message like, who do you think you are? That's the phrase,
Mm.
right? Like,
Hmm.
oh, don't you think you're special because you're doing this? And
Mm.
it's like, actually, I'm just doing me, and all I really want in the world is for you to also be able to do you.
Yeah.
And so this should like, I don't want this to be a problem.
Hmm.
Um, and also, Jonathan, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I love your perspective on this, is because the arts like is considered so like either childish
Mm.
or professional, and those are
Yeah.
the only two routes. There's nothing in between, right? And so
True.
and then I think that a lot of people don't actually know anything. So this is how
Mm.
I'm coming to understand it.
Hmm.
People find our process weird
Mm.
because they don't have access, like they've never seen it before. And
Yeah.
so their only reaction is, whoa, what's he doing? What, I don't get that.
Mm.
Like, and I think this is another heartbreak of the fact that the arts is not sustained throughout our lives in many different ways, because then we could talk to each other about it. Because I think
Yeah.
we have a really limited ability. And that's why artists, when they get together, are like,
Hmm.
like chat, chat, chat,
Yeah.
chat, chat, because we're so excited to be able to have
That's
those
true.
meaningful conversations and we're starting at the same place. Like
Mm.
it's occurred to me because I have so many friendships that are sort of creative, magical, entrepreneurial people
Yeah.
that sometimes I'll talk to my husband who has a very regular job in government and I'll say something. He'll be like, no, that would still be weird if you were at my work, And I'd be like, oh, okay. But
Yeah.
this is why for me it's just so that gives me power to not feel so upset, to not
Mm.
take on board what people say so much and just go,
Hmm.
wow, they really probably don't know
Yeah.
that it's important that I spend these many hours stretching, or
Yeah.
that journaling in the morning, it may look like I'm sitting here quietly journaling, but oh, must be nice for you. Well, yes, absolutely, it's nice for me. It is a privilege, and I am so grateful for it. And also, it is the root of all the work I do in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's important. It's important work, and it's really misunderstood.
I agree. I agree. I think also, um, and I'm not blaming arts education here, but I'm just pointing out how, especially when we look at the history of a particular modality, right? We filter it through the lens of here are the pieces that have survived the deluge of our memory as a
Yes.
collective, right? Like
Yes.
we have selective memory as a species, and
Yes.
for whatever reason, in the one of my favorite examples from music is actually Johann Sebastian Bach, right? J.S. Bach was not famous at all during his lifetime. He never left Leipzig, right, which was where he was born and where he worked. And he was not like the Taylor Swift of his day, so to
Right.
speak, at all. He was kind of this boring guy, actually. He was like third choice um, in his town, and he mostly held positions as an organist because he couldn't get the court positions. He wasn't cool enough, you know? And
Mm.
for whatever reason, throughout history, a lot of composers looked up to him, years and years after his death. And
Mm.
now we know him as like basically the grandfather of Western music,
Mm.
so-called Western music, right? But that wasn't the case when he was alive. He was just a working musician who was very dedicated and devoted to his craft. And I think this is kind of interesting on both ends, right? Because there are all these composers that we have forgotten about, or that we somehow see through the lens of like, oh, they're less than J.S. Bach, you know,
Right.
when they may have been more influential during that their lifetime and maybe more representative of the kind of music that people wanted to listen to. And on the other hand, too, we kind of forgot the reality that like Bach was mm, not having, really great or like lavish life when he was alive,
Yes.
and there's something lost in translation there because in our minds as musicians, especially those of us who are trained in conservatory, we just kind of saw him as this God figure, and
Yes.
as, his perspective and his skills and the way that he laid out the rules for quote unquote Western classical music became the template for so many other composers later down the road, right? And so it kind of created a distortion, actually, Jamie,
Mm.
that isn't, this is something I saw you talking about on your website as well. I think one of your clients had mentioned to you, or your students mentioned, I was never taught how to live life as an artist, and yeah, I'm curious to hear you speak more about this. Like, what is, and especially through the lens of being a performer, what have you found in your journey as a performer and in kind of becoming a coach to other creative and artistic people? What have you found to be necessary for performers to be able to do what they do?
Mm. I think what you used a word that caught my ear, and it's a word like I literally have a program called devotion
Mm,
because I think this is everything. And it relates to your example of Bach too. Like in between that place of we're little kids and we're allowed to play or we're professionals and we get to do artists, there is a world of people who are deeply creative, have artistic spirits, have like there's so much more talent in this world than we've ever seen. All you have to do is go to some local restaurant that has an open mic night and suddenly go, how is this person playing here? You
mm,
know?
mhm,
Um, and so I think the key is unhooking a bit from the capitalist machine,
mhm,
and coming back to the fact that this is who I am. When I said out in theater school, in grad school, I was like, this is me. Like, I am so me right now.
mm.
That's the experience I think we're all aching for.
Yeah.
And so you're allowed to build your life around art and art making, even if you're not getting paid for it.
Yeah.
And I think I really, again, I learned that from theater. Theater is such an underpaid thing. I had so many day jobs where this person was an actor and this person, or if I was in a show, everybody was coming from work. I got changed into my costumes in the work bathroom and then
Mm,
took the subway to the show.
mhm,
That's devotion.
mm,
And maybe I didn't get paid for it, but it filled my heart. Like it changed me.
mm,
It allowed me to share something with the world that was deeply essential to my spirit. I had fun. I met amazing people. I wrestled with phenomenal ideas. I was brave, challenged. I remember the first time ever singing in a live show. I mean, I don't think I've ever done anything so brave. So it's like life is available to you through the arts.
mm,
And it's choosing that
mhm,
again and again and again, even if it doesn't pay you, even if there's not lots of people running to you with accolades, even if your partner doesn't get it,
mhm.
but
Yeah.
it's something that's calling you and you're saying yes again and again and again.
Mhm,
And from my experience, like doing that, just saying that yes again and again and again to a show, to an idea, to something that stretched me, to a class, got me here, Jonathan.
mhm.
And I love my life.
Yeah.
I'm doing meaningful work. I feel creatively excited and I'm making things every day. And it doesn't ever end. Like
Mhm,
there's no there, that saying?
mhm.
Like, I guess it was about a year and a half ago, I trained as a DJ. Like, I am like, people go, you did what now? Like maybe if I was like 27, even, it would be, you feel a little old to be becoming a DJ, and that again, my creative fire just, it's like just tossing logs onto your creative fire again and
Yeah.
again and again and again. And I think it keeps you engaged, alive, yourself, connected to spirit. I mean, everybody has a different thing. I think different mediums. So for some people, sports is their metaphor for life, and through
Mhm.
sports they understand everything. For
Yeah.
me and those of us who I really believe we are allowed to call ourselves artists, it's when the arts are how we understand ourselves and the world. To
Mm.
me, that's an artist.
Yeah. Okay, I have a couple questions here for you. The first one is, and remind me if I forget about the second one, because the second one is about DJ, and I feel like it's
Okay.
very important. Very important. But I want to start in another question, which is, what would you say, Jamie, to the artist who is in a very specific moment of their journey where they feel like their idea or inspiration or even execution, like the product or the performance that they were giving out, is maybe mm, I struggle to phrase this, but uh, what comes up for me in my mind at this moment is like they feel like their level of proficiency, inspiration is higher than the accolades they're getting, and they're feeling disappointed about that. Because that's a very tender place to be
That's a
in.
very tender place. Oh, Jonathan, I thought you were going somewhere different. I thought you were going to the place of the distance between our vision and what we're able to accomplish. But you went from we were able to accomplish things we're really proud of and feel really great. And then we're out there in the world
And we're not
and we're
getting,
not being
we're
met.
not
That's
seeing.
how
Yeah.
that's
Hmm.
how I refer to it. We're
Yeah.
not being met.
Yeah.
I do think this is one of the hardest parts
Mm,
of this particular path. And one, I want to say, please know you're not alone. Like this is a part of your hero's journey. There are dark days. It's valid. And you're allowed to be in it. You're allowed to stay in bed for a day. You're allowed to cry and be frustrated. You're allowed to point your finger and go, why them, not me? I'm doing, you know? And
hmm,
then for me, the most significant thing is being around other creatives, other artists who do see you,
mm,
who do relate, who have the same kind of challenge, the kind of people who can say, "Oh man, that chord, like that hit me."
mm,
Because there's something in your soul, especially performers need to be received. Like
Mm.
our work is not complete until someone hears it, sees it, responds to it. So it's a little bit different than the other arts where we can make a book and we can put it over here. I think
Yeah.
about my brother who was a musician and then became a writer, and he said he became a writer because it was so much more painful to not be received live than it
Mm.
is to have something go, okay, you're not receiving my book. It's okay. I'm writing the next one, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
You know, but this
Yes.
this is real. Also to
Mm.
tend to yourself in a physical way. This is
Yeah.
something, these feelings are happening in your body.
Mm.
And it's important to let them move through you like a storm.
Mhm.
So if that means extra sleep, if that means I find showers to be such a beautiful way to wash away all of that negativity and that energy.
Mhm.
And so learning how to tend yourself during those dark times, having people with you who can be supportive and who can see what you're doing. This is also where a spiritual practice can be really profound because you don't have to rely on anybody else but you and whatever your version of that is. You
Mm.
know, so like I will take to heart that I will go and read a poem to my lilac tree in the backyard.
Mm.
And I will, in my heart, feel like that's received,
Yeah.
you know? And so, again, here we're not talking about if we were going down the road of, and I want to make money at this, and this is my profession, and like there's all sorts of people who can help you with strategies and work and whatever. But what's going in inside you so
Mm.
that you can stay devoted. Also, allow yourself pleasure. You know, we talked
Mm.
earlier about pleasure in the process. If we're always just like focused on that result and we're being really hard on ourselves, don't let this turn in on you.
Mm.
Like, trust in your own vision, trust in the beauty of what you're making. You know, like,
Mm.
we all know when we've made something, we're like, I'm so proud of this.
Yeah.
I am just so proud of it. And let yourself feel that and celebrate it too, and let yourself let the joy of the process into your, because then it stays worth it.
Yeah.
No matter what happens at the end, I know that it is my joy to come and sit at my desk, the sun streaming in the morning or the moon at night, and write in my journal and come up with ideas. That is the life I want to live,
Mm. Mhm.
you know? So
Mhm.
I'm creating my artistic life, which I thrive in, whether or not anybody else does anything about,
Yeah.
responds to it.
Yeah. You know what I'm hearing, Jamie, as you're speaking actually is healing and maybe rewiring one's relationship to control. Because
Ooh.
I
Mhm.
don't know, what I hear a lot when control comes up, especially in spiritual spaces. I'm not super sure what the narrative is in the artist spaces actually. But what I hear a lot when it comes to spirituality is almost like seeing control as this problem that needs to be solved. Like, oh,
Mm.
your need to control needs to be dissolved or something like that. But I
Mm.
found for myself, I can't because that's just part of who I am, you know? Like
Yeah,
I want to
yeah.
be able to control, but I think the journey then for me is actually to learn better what I can control and what I can't control. And then to
Yes.
have a better relationship or a more healthy, nourishing relationship with control, because there are actually, in fact, things that you can control in life. Like you can control whether you show up to your practice or not. You can
That's
control,
right.
how you experience being received, as you were talking about, right? Like you can
Mm.
expand that definition and you can control whose definition of being received or success even um, by investigating, what's already existent there in your system and
Yes.
asking yourself, does that resonate with me? Does that feel useful for me in this moment, right? And
Mm.
starting to maybe rewrite that or starting to question that, aligning yourself with people who have more of a resonant relationship with some of these concepts as you, because I don't really know if we can get rid of our need to control as humans,
Yes.
so why try?
Yes. And also I don't think we should get rid of our need to be met and received. Like that's
Yeah.
such a
Ooh,
human impulse. It's
exactly.
okay to want people to love what you made. I'll
Hmm.
also say when you were talking, I was really thinking about we're at a heightened, often with the arts, we're at a really heightened level of emotional reactivity to people's response because
Mm.
so many of us have childhood art wounds. And so, like, it's not just this person who's not seeing my work, it's my mom,
Yeah.
who,
Hmm.
and so that we go right back there. So there's lots of healing to be done and establishing good relationship with yourself, with spirit, with other people, and with the art. I always say this to people, turn to your art. Your
Mm.
art is reflecting back to you and what you've done and what you've accomplished. And together you can be so proud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get into learning the craft
Did
of being a DJ, Jamie? And I will tell you, I'll share a little bit with you that a couple months ago, I saw a video on YouTube of this YouTube DJ who has a career now, and I had this call from within of like, oh, look at that. Like that person's doing the thing that I think you'll enjoy as well. Like that's kind of how I felt my soul or my spirit talking to me. And I have to tell you, Jamie, I don't have a lot of art forms that I have a lot of judgment around, but I realized in that moment I had a lot of judgment towards DJs. And
okay.
I then kind of rewinded myself and realized like, oh, back when I was in music school, a couple of my friends who, paradoxically enough, this specific friend I'm thinking about ended up becoming a world famous tenor who just plays in, metropolitan opera performances everywhere in the world.
Wow.
And he was a DJ when we were in school. Like I think he threw these parties. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe, shouldn't say that publicly, maybe, but but he probably, sold some weed at the time, which was illegal. But he had the side hustle as a DJ, and I also then remember a few years after that learning how to produce electronic music and then being in the same school. It's kind of this independent music production school with DJs. And I remember actually that I had a little bit of judgment. It's almost like, oh, but I'm the real musician here. DJs are not real
Yes.
musicians. And I was like,
Yes.
where is that voice coming from? I was like, that's so wild because I I have to say, Jamie, I really got into music because I love listening to music. And
Mm,
I loved making mixtape as a child. And so I think I'm kind of setting this question up for you with again, earlier you were mentioning, in visual art, we have this like, kind of really vast, I think we were talking about visual art, this vast um, division between the child making
yes. Mm,
drawings, and then this painter who sold their painting for millions of dollars, right?
yeah.
And we don't look at the very wide swath of people in the middle. And I think
Yes.
with DJing and being a musician, maybe there's a little bit of that too. Like, making mixtapes or listening to music as being seen as this amateur hour thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then this, composer, this jazz Bach person, who is like this god, right? And
Yes.
I think the DJ actually occupies archetypally this provocateur somewhere in the
Mm,
middle. Because, I was actually doing a little bit of research around this about how DJs are actually some DJs are very highly paid,
yeah.
right? And almost kind of achieve God status as well. But there is kind of this Dionysian, not quite respected or respectable place in society, but somehow still able to reach a certain height. So, anyways, that was a
Yeah.
very long prelude, but I want to hear about your personal relationship with being a DJ.
I love hearing all of this. And I do
Mm.
think we're in a certain moment of time with DJing. And I've got some great resources for you, Jonathan.
Mhm.
And I
Please.
think my guess would be that if you start DJing, you'll see how you as a musician are going to bring something so magical to to the mix, like, you'll be able to hear things and respond to things and be able to create something because I think one of the things I've noticed is as the DJ, I'm creating the night, right?
Mhm.
So somebody else has created the songs and I'm thankful to them. I respect them. I honor them. I in my when I teach my dance class, my dance event, when I run it, I say to people, one of your jobs here tonight is to honor the music.
Mm.
And even if it's not to your particular taste, a song here, a song there, remember what it took for someone to bring that music to life. So there's a way of respecting each of those individual creators. And also, I'm doing something with it, like a night of theater, of creating an entire event, telling a story, taking people through an experience.
Mm.
And that's what I love. It sort of taps into, for me, it taps into my theater roots. How can I create an experience from the beginning to the end
Right.
through music? And
Yeah.
music just bypasses our brain and all the tightness we've talked about and gets us into an entirely different place. And
Mm.
for me, this is not something I would have ever thought that I would do. Like it would not have been on my radar. Um, but during the pandemic, I came across a woman, Tasha Blank. She's
Mm.
a DJ from New York City, and all the clubs were closed down. So she started running these events online.
Mm.
Jonathan, I went to every single one. I think I missed one ever
Wow.
for like
Wow.
over a year and a half, I think she did them, maybe even a little longer. And because I could dance here in my own space, I could move my body, I could
Mm.
be in a community of dancers. And then she has a DJ school.
Mm.
And I was kind of I've always wanted to bring dance is my home art. It's my first love. And I've always wanted to bring dance to my community,
Mm.
especially older women have nowhere to dance. Older women want to dance so badly that you can go to any wedding and see how quickly they are the first people on the dance floor. And there's
Mm.
nowhere. And so
Mm.
that was part of my motivation. And I just remember when Tasha started teaching, and I just said to my husband one day, Tasha's doing this DJ thing. I wonder if he's like, I think you'd like that. Say, I guess not unlike when I went to theater school, it was something that just became in front of me. And I
Yeah.
always just do the next right step,
Mm.
So I was like, that looks interesting. I'll take her
Mhm.
introductory thing. That looks interesting. And Jonathan, I had no idea that I would end up spending like losing time
Wow.
listening to hours and hours of music, trying different mixes, sitting here going, whoa, like when those two things go really well together, like yelling out in my studio. And it has become like an essential part of my life. And just in terms of
Wow.
who becomes DJs, I'm very thankful that in the program I did, there was such a group of people who were deeply committed to being artists,
Mm.
to contributing to their communities and to bringing some real healing and magic and aliveness. And this taps into the sort of subversive nature of what you were saying earlier, a different space to be
Mm.
that we need in the world right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That is so beautiful, Jamie.
Thank
I want to hear this is what's emerging when you were speaking. I want to hear your journey and your relationship to having multiple different modalities or like
you.
artistic medium that you engage in. Because I think, speaking about judgment, this is also something that I think the culture can get a little stuck around.
Yes.
That, when you brought in the word devotion, it's making me think about how at an earlier point in my life, I thought that devotion meant sticking to one thing. I thought
Yes,
it
I
meant
hear
like
you.
committing no matter fucking what, so
Yes.
it's really interesting because I feel like this is something that you and I share in common, where we kind of allowed ourselves to try different things and be prolific and proficient actually in a lot of different things. Like it wasn't
Yes.
just that you decided, okay, I like to DJ and then you just kind of did it yourself, which is a very valid way of doing it. But it
Yes.
sounds to me like you went to DJ school, like you wanted to tap into community, you w wanted to tap into certain mentors that, resonate with you on a deeper level. So I want to hear you speak more about one, your process in allowing yourself to have multiple different interests and things
Yes.
that you are exploring and ultimately become pretty good at. And two, did you also experience that kind of internal judgment or even external judgment?
It's a great question. And I'll tell you, as a coach, I have so many people come to me and they stress about this. Like, I
Mm,
need to pick my one thing or I'm
yeah.
not serious. No
Yes.
one will really believe I'll never be a good writer if I also try to be an artist. And there's a
Mm,
lot of schools of thought that like come at you with that.
yeah.
And I do think this is where, again, theater has helped me because it's a multidisciplinary thing to do. If
Theater.
you're going to put on theater, you're also going to paint a set. You're also going to
Mm,
design your costumes.
yeah.
You're also
Yeah.
going to do vocal work. You're
Mm,
also going so there's a way that I just understood in that art form that being a creative person is being a multidimensional person.
yeah.
And in my experience, I can honestly say that any of my arts have benefited from my other art. So, like I just said, in my DJing, I think one of the things I bring to it is my theatricality.
Mm,
That I have that underpinning. Or as an entrepreneur, if I'm creating the website or design, anything design related, my any art background I have is going to help with that. But I do also think what you said something incredibly important is I didn't just, I don't, I have a very complicated relationship to the word play. Sometimes play in quotes. I didn't just lightly tap on any of those things. I dove
mm,
into them.
yeah.
I gave myself over to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes they've been also, if we're blessed, life is long,
Mm,
And so there's periods of my life can say this was the dance period of my life. This was the theater period of my life.
mm,
This is the DJ period of my life. This was the entrepreneurial period of my life.
yeah.
And of course, they're all still there. But I do think that's important. One of the things about devotion is for me, and this is where I'm a bit of a hard ass, is is honoring the work.
Mm,
And a part of honoring that work is to take it seriously, to
yeah.
treat it with some kind of reverence.
Mm,
Like I'm not that kid in class. I'm in one more art class and we're goofing about and I'm like, could you please show me shading?
yeah.
I want to learn.
Yes. 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 Wow. It's so affirming actually to hear you say that, Jamie, because I have found too, I've had a lot of, I've been blessed truly with really incredible mentors over the years on so many different areas of my life. I would say I deeply credit my parents for being my first mentors because they really were. And, my mom taught me to work really hard, and my dad taught me to be smart about things. So that was the beginning of all the mentorships. But something I've learned with regards to the art of being a good mentee or making the
Mm,
most out of mentorship relationship is to ask questions and be
yes.
honest and tell your mentors where you needed support. And this is
Yes.
something that I've had to learn in my own work with clients too, where, it's kind of awkward, Jamie. There is that moment where you can feel like something's not truly landing, and you have to kind of push the person and be like, did you get that? Where is the resistance? Like actually
Yes.
taking the lead, because a lot of teachers and mentors don't want to go there with people. And a lot of mentees don't want to go there with their mentors. And then
It's true.
we kind of stay in the surface, when I
Yeah.
think, and I have recently learned this may be a Virgo rising thing too. I'm thinking
Mm,
about our third house in Scorpio, that
hmm.
in our communication, there is something kind of cutting about it. Even though we can be very gentle and we choose our words very carefully and we don't, try to provoke people unnecessarily, but there is kind of that. Mm.
See,
Let's
that
go
makes me want
there.
to. I got to ask you a question, and maybe this is something that primarily you and I will be interested, but that makes me wonder, are you somebody who, because this happens to me all the time, I'm a very warm person. I have a very
Hmm.
gentle approach. I really want everyone to feel welcome.
Yeah.
So then people are often surprised when they hit the part of me that's really hardcore about something. Yes,
Yes,
okay.
yes. 1,000%, Jamie. I mean, I'm actually in the period, and I'm sure this period will fade and integrate into something gentler. But I'm currently in a period where I'm actually letting myself lead with more of that energy up
Yes,
front, so that,
yes.
because I have found that when I lead with that energy, it actually serves the people who come into my spaces and containers.
Can
Because,
I give you proof of that?
yeah, tell
Okay,
me.
so for people, I'm studying emergence astrology, and Jonathan's one of my teachers. And still, I have quoted you very recently because in my mind, you said to us, these sigils are so important that I should be able to walk into your house at 4 o'clock in the morning, wake you up, and show it to you, and you know what it is.
Yeah, I did say
Yeah,
that.
but that stuck with me. I'm like, I understand that. It's the same
Mhm.
as knowing your lines. It's the
Yeah.
same as knowing where my fingers are for that note on the flute when I did the
Yep.
flute. Like
Yep.
it's you just that's the facility you want to have with it so that you can have the freedom to work with it.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful to you bringing that to the table.
Mm. Hmm. Thank you, Jamie, for that reflection. It's also making me think about the level of inner work that I've had to go through to be able to say that and have
Mm,
that land for people not as how do I say this? I feel like sometimes when we are on that edge, right, as a teacher or as a coach or as a practitioner, when we haven't sufficiently done the inner work, it can land for people as kind of blamey or shamey a little bit.
sure.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah,
And it's like
100%.
it takes time to get to the point. And for me, I've had to do that through my podcast because the level of and you probably people listening or as someone who has listened to my podcast probably didn't know this, Jamie, but it's like the level of freak out that sometimes I go through, Saturday night or Sunday night before sharing that episode on a Monday is really monumental. And
Yes.
I've really had to like work through my own resistance to, and I'm talking specifically about the episodes where I talk about the astrology, because I am in constant dialogue and struggle sometimes with this art form, and
Mm,
I have my own judgment too around that, and I have a really exciting, vigorous, alive relationship with astrology and also really complicated. Because I have to say to you, Jamie, I look at people doing astrology out there and I don't resonate with all of them. And
yes.
I think that I would even say as a creative, two other creative people who maybe shy away from the part of them that kind of has a little bit of judgment or that hard ass, side of them that you were talking about, that I think this is part of a really integral part of ourselves as creative people,
Yeah.
that
There's a
we have
couple of things I
standards.
could, yeah. I have to say, like a while ago, I wrote an email to my newsletter was
Mhm.
about how my discomfort with saying I'm studying astrology. And I mean, I tell
Mm.
everybody I'm doing tarot every day. Like I don't even think about that. But for some reason, it brought that little like something, something about it.
Mm.
So I relate to that. But I want to go
Yeah.
back to you talking about that sweet spot of
Mm.
like holding the devotion without turning into the critic,
Mhm.
And I really do feel like you and I both are sort of on this journey to embody a new archetype of
Mhm.
like I'm just gonna go Jedi here. Like I'm just gonna go Obi-Wan Kenobi here. For me, that was like when I was growing up, like that was an example that I found very powerful, potent of a mentor. So it's
Mm.
like that kind of mentor who is there and who's going to gently move you forward, who's not afraid to tell you what you're doing isn't, like you got to name, you're doing such a disservice to people
Mm.
if you're afraid to name what
Yeah.
you see. And
Mhm.
I think the key for me there has been unattachment.
Mhm.
I will always say to people, I am okay with being wrong. I do not care. If I
Yeah.
say this and you're like, no, that's not for me, great, then tell me what is for you, and it'll
Right.
move us further.
Right.
But that pushing, it's a delicate thing. It's an art form, and it comes from such a place of love.
Mhm.
Such a place of love for the person you're working with, and such a place of love, once again, of honoring the work. Like this work is worthy of this kind of attention, time, care, diligence. And let me just say, don't ever think that means to me that it means lack of fun or laughter, or because the sacred is also hilarious.
Yes. Yes.
But like bring it both. To me, that's what I'm always trying to do, to bring it
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. Hmm. I have one last question for you, Jamie,
Okay.
which is about being an entrepreneur, because you also spoke about this
Yeah.
in
Yes.
your website, and I will say to you, I really love getting to see Jamie the entrepreneur in because I do feel that coming through from your email inviting me into, being a part of Magic in the Making and then being on your email list and seeing the way you write emails and your website.
Mm.
I can really see your devotion to the craft of putting your work out there.
Oh, I'm touched by that.
Yeah, and the reason why I want to ask you about this is because I remember when I first thought about even just the word entrepreneur. Like it took me so many years to even be comfortable with that word. I was like, I am not. No, I am not a no, no, no.
Yes, yes.
Like that was just my response. Like,
Yes.
no, don't give that to
Yes.
me. So yeah, I'm currently in the moment personally too of like really investigating like where is that judgment coming from?
Yeah.
And I think I'm in a beautiful place in my process with it now, but I'm really curious to hear about yours and what has
Mm.
been your arc and trajectory around being an entrepreneur because what I really perceive from you is such devotion and commitment to the craft, like even as you're talking about your um vocation as a coach. Like I feel so
Mm.
much weight and commitment and commitment to having fun too. Like I
Thank
hear
you.
you want to help people and you want to have fun. And
Yes.
I think this is something that you bring into your journey as an entrepreneur as well.
I really appreciate this reflection, and I would say I started in that same place. I think as artists, we kind of have a natural inclination that like we artists are on one side and those biz people are on the other side, and we're kind of there's
Yeah.
some natural antagonism there. And
Yeah.
look, I have an MBA, like I had an MBA dad, and who taught ethics. And
Mm,
I still remember when I started working for myself, Dad and I went out for coffee, and I said to him, Dad, I'm just like, I'm kind of understanding that maybe businesses could help people. And
mm.
he was like, yes, Jamie. That's the, like that's the idea, and I think he probably in that moment felt so seen.
Mm,
But
mm,
it took me a while, and that's been a constant practice. Like when you were describing, the stress of Monday night, like Monday mornings podcast coming out and that kind of sitting in that stew. I have done that so many times over the course of my career in so many ways. And I think that entrepreneurship, the things that keyed in for me that were important and made it worth working through and healing my business stuff was one, when I was deciding what to do with my life, I looked for what were the things that have always been constant ever
mm,
since I was a kid. And they were the arts, my love of people, and wanting to do my own thing.
mm,
And so, like leadership,
mhm,
and that was when I realized, like, I am so much happier working for myself. I'm
mm,
happier in charge of my own schedule. I'm happier setting my own vision.
mm,
And so I decided to take up that. that wand. I'm thinking of my tarot cards and just picked up that wand and I went with it. And then really it was it was work. It was work to feel, is it okay for me to sell people?
Hmm.
Like, like not to sell people. That sounds horrible. Is it okay for me to sell to
Two people.
people?
Hmm.
But I will say that was the hardest one,
Hmm.
especially I went from doing a lot of free things to starting to sell courses. And that threshold was one of the most challenging thresholds I've ever been through.
Wow. What was
And be
challenging about it, Jamie?
just, well, I felt I would disappoint people, or
Hmm.
that and now I had to prove. I'm horrible when proving energy is involved. They had to
I
prove now
relate.
that this was something different or more
Yeah.
or better or that people would feel like I bait and switched, like, come, I've
Hmm.
got this free thing, but you could buy this. And
Hmm.
so what I had to do was really come to what's in integrity for me.
Yeah.
Like, where do I really feel in integrity? And also, and I still work on this somewhat, is I am allowed to ask for an exchange for this.
Yeah.
I've poured my life into it. I've poured my wisdom into it. I
Hmm.
believe it to be helpful.
Hmm.
And so it is okay to say, please pour something back into this well,
Yeah.
in exchange for that.
Yeah.
And I will say that out of all the creative endeavors I've done, entrepreneurship has been among the maybe the most challenging. But it is a transformational journey. Like
Yeah.
it's really made me stronger, more assertive, more clear,
Hmm.
for sure. And one of my favorite things about entrepreneurship, to go back to my dad, is to be in a class and to just be hearing or to get feedback from a podcast, and you kind of hear what's needed, and then to be able to go, well, I'll go make that.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's something really beautiful about being able to respond to that. Like,
Yeah.
that's how the devotion program came out, is that I could see people wanting deeply to spend more time with their art. I'm like, well, let's do that then.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
do that. Let me design
Right.
something for you so that we
Right.
can do that. The
Hmm.
freedom of that, the magic of that, that's extraordinary to me.
Wow. Wow. Well, Jamie, this conversation has just been so amazing and nourishing to me. Thank you for being here. I want to make sure to ask you to um please share if there's anything you want people to know. How can people work with you? How can people find
Mm.
your courses? What do you have coming up?
Well, first, just come over to the School of creativemagic.com
Hmm.
and everything's there. Come sign up for Magic in the Making. It is free. Jonathan will be there. I'm interviewing so many really amazing, wide range. We've talked about what it means to be sort of multi-passionate.
Yeah.
I've got people whose background is tarot. I've got people who are artists, who are writers, who are astrologers, so it's going to be a really deep and interesting conversation. I actually have a panel of my own entrepreneurial witchy mastermind is going to do a panel. So I'm really excited to share that with people. And I have DJs contributing mixes. And we're going to do a live creative session where I play, like, I'm going to mix live and people can come and paint or draw or doodle or whatever it is they want to do. So that would be the way in. Come and check that out. And then I'll be sure to share all the rest of the stuff that we do
Mm.
at the School of Creative Magic. But that's a good place to start.
Yay. Thank you, Jamie. I really appreciate you and all that you do and all that you are. This has
Oh,
been so amazing.
thank you, Jonathan. I've felt very inspired by our conversation and really want to acknowledge the sensitivity with which you hold the bigger picture and also take us down interesting roads. It's
Mm.
a really beautiful skill, and I'm so glad to have spent this time with you.
Thank you.